Hey everyone, it's Kristen from k.becca, and today we'll be testing out another Deco Foil product that's new this year. These are the Flock Transfer Sheets, and I purchased these a little while back. They've been sitting on my desk just waiting to be used, so let's get to using them. The Flock Transfer Sheets come as 6-inch by 12-inch sheets with 4 sheets per package, and they're currently available in 8 different colors. I purchased 5 of the colors. I have the Black Velvet, White Latte, Blue Diamond, Think Pink, and Sunshine Yellow. Today I'm going to be using the sheets in a couple of different ways to create flocked backgrounds for cards. For the first card, I cut a piece of the My Favorite Things Lemon Drop cardstock to 3 3/4 inches wide by 5 1/4 inches tall. I'll temporarily attach it to my craft mat by adding a piece of removable double-sided tape to the back, and this will prevent it from moving around when I stencil on it in a little bit. Next, I'll place a stencil over the cardstock and tape it in place, again so it doesn't move around when I'm working with it. I made this stencil using the diagonal line stencil cut files that you can find in my shop, and I cut it from Duralar with a silhouette cameo. If you want to learn more about cutting stencils with your die cutting machine, check out the video at the link that should be popping up right about now. After the stencil is taped in place, I'll add some Deco Foil Transfer Gel to the cardstock using a palette knife, and then I'll come in with a Deco Foil stencil pal and start spreading the gel evenly over the stencil. I'm really liking these stencil pal tools, especially for larger stenciled areas like card backgrounds. Because they're a larger size than, say, a palette knife or a credit card, they really make it easier to spread the gel around quickly and get a more even layer on larger stenciled areas. When I'm finished applying the transfer gel, I'll carefully remove the tape, then the stencil from the cardstock. And then I'll immediately place the stencil in a container of water that I have off to the side of my work area, so the transfer gel doesn't get a chance to dry on the stencil. I forgot to put the stencil pal in there right away, but I put it into the water before the transfer gel dried too. Next, I'll carefully lift the cardstock from the craft mat, and the removable tape actually stayed stuck to the mat, which makes it very convenient because I can just set the cardstock off to the side to dry. But even if the tape had stuck to the back of the cardstock, it's pretty easy to remove and can be used over and over again until it loses its stickiness. To clean the transfer gel from the craft mat, I'll scoop up any excess that I can with a palette knife and return it to the jar, and then I'll spritz the area with some water and wipe it up with a paper towel. It's really easy cleanup as long as you don't allow it to sit and dry on the mat. For the second card background, I cut a piece of white cardstock to 4 1/4 inches wide by 5 1/2 inches tall. I'm using a stencil again cut from Duralar using a silhouette cameo. The cut file that I used is the Heart Stencil No. 2 cut file that you can find in my shop. When I'm finished adding the transfer gel to the cardstock, I'll scrape the excess back into the jar, remove the tape and then the stencil, carefully lift the cardstock from the craft mat, and set it aside to dry. The transfer gel takes about an hour or so to dry completely, and while those pieces are drying, we can start working on the next card. For the third card, I went in to try cutting the Flock Transfer Sheet with a die cutting machine, but unfortunately that didn't work out so well. I attempted to cut cloud shapes from the White Latte color, and I kind of wish that I had cut something from another color so it'd be easier for you to see here, but I'm hoping you can see what happened with the die cutting machine. Basically, the little plastic housing piece that's on silhouette cutting blades acted as sort of a little snowplow as it worked its way around the flock transfer sheet, removing the flocking on the areas just inside and outside the cut lines on the sheet. That's kind of a bummer, but it is what it is, so I was on to Plan B. Instead of cutting the shapes directly from the flock transfer, Plan B was to cut the shapes from double-sided adhesive sheets. I used the Silhouette brand sheets, which cut great. I've used these adhesive sheets to cut everything from more basic shapes like the clouds that I'm cutting today to more delicate hand-lettered cut files and lots of other things, and I really like the results that I get. The Silhouette sheets have a white side and a yellow side, and I almost always cut them with the yellow side to the mat. My cut settings were deep enough to cut the whole way through the backer, which is what I usually do, but you don't have to cut the whole way through. You could always just cut through the top protective sheet and the adhesive, and then just peel them off like stickers from a sticker sheet and adhere them to your surface. I'd normally peel the yellow protective paper off first and adhere that side to the cardstock, but I wanted you to be able to see what I'm doing, so I flipped the clouds yellow side up and laid them out on a piece of white cardstock. Once I'm happy with the placement, one by one, I'll remove the white protective paper from the clouds and adhere them in place on the cardstock. After the clouds are all adhered in place, I'll cut off any overhanging bits with a pair of non-stick scissors. Next, I'll cut pieces of the white latte flock transfer sheet to a little larger than each cloud. I thought this would be a good way to avoid using more of the flock sheet than I needed, but I actually should have just cut a single piece of the flock sheet to cover the cardstock, and I'll tell you why a little bit later. After I cut a piece of the flock sheet, I then peeled off the yellow protective paper from the coordinating cloud and placed the flock piece flocking side down onto the cloud to adhere it in place. When we're finished adding all of the pieces of flock transfer sheets to the clouds, we'll set this off to the side, and now we're ready to make our cards. I'm using a Mink machine to transfer the flock to the cardstock for all of the cards, and I've had that off to the side heating up on a heat setting of 4. When the cardstock pieces with the transfer gel are dry, the gel will be clear. It usually takes about an hour or so for the gel to dry completely. For the first card, we'll use the lemon yellow cardstock piece, and I've cut a piece of the sunshine yellow flock transfer sheet to a little bit larger than the cardstock piece. Place the flock sheet flocking side down over the cardstock. Then we'll place everything into a folded piece of printer paper and run it through the Mink twice, which is what the instructions on the transfer sheet packaging suggest for best results. After I run the piece through the Mink 2 times, we'll let it cool for a few seconds, and then we'll peel the transfer sheet off. Right here was when I fell in love with this product. This is almost as magical as peeling foil sheets off after they've been run through the Mink. The flocking looks so awesome, and it adds such a fun touch to the card. I just wanted to keep on petting it, but we've got to move on. I also want to mention that the piece that's left after we peel the flock sheet off of the cardstock is actually an element in its own right and could be used as the background or an embellishment piece on another card. To finish the card, we'll add adhesive to the back of the flocked cardstock piece with a double-sided adhesive runner and center it on the front of a top-folding A2 size card base. For the graphic element on the card, I'm going to be using a piece that was left over from an earlier project where I used the foil quill tool to foil the outline of the image, then watercolored the lemon using watercolors from the Prima Decadent Pies watercolor set. A link to the video with this project should be popping up right about now if you want to check it out. I'll pop that up on the card front using some double-sided adhesive foam squares, and then I'll also pop up the sentiment piece, and this has a piece of double-sided adhesive foam tape cut to size on the back. This is a print and cut piece that I printed with my laser printer, then foiled with Deco Foil gold foil and a Mink machine. And after I do this card is finished. For the second card, we'll be using the stenciled heart background that we made earlier with the transfer gel. I'll cut a piece of the Think Pink flock transfer sheet just a little bit larger than the cardstock, and I'll place it flocked side down onto the cardstock and run it through the Mink twice. After that, we'll let it cool down for a few seconds until it's cool to the touch, and then we'll peel off the flock sheet. I don't think this is ever going to get old. I just love peeling the sheet off. Since this is a really bright flocking color against a white background, I think this best shows just how solidly the flock transfers to the stenciled images. The flocking results are awesome, and again, you can use the leftover flock sheet piece to make another card, which gives you more bang for your buck. I trimmed the cardstock down a little bit before adhering it to the card base with a double-sided adhesive runner, and the flocked piece is such great eye candy that I really don't want to cover it up, so I'll finish this card by simply adding a sentiment piece and popping it up with some double-sided foam tape that's been cut to size. This sentiment is also a print and cut piece that I foiled with Deco Foil gold foil and a Mink machine. For the third and final card, the background will be the piece that we set up earlier with the die-cut adhesive clouds and the white latte flock transfer sheet. I'll run the piece through the Mink twice, just like we've done with the other 2 cards, and then we'll peel off the flock sheets to make super cute flocked clouds. The process for this background was a little bit different because I cut the flock transfer sheet into pieces to fit the individual clouds, instead of just cutting a single larger piece to cover the cardstock. And I want to point out that after I ran it through the Mink, you can see rectangular debossed areas in the shapes of the flock sheet pieces, which really doesn't look that great. So if I had to do this over, I'd definitely cut a single larger piece and avoid making the indentations in the cardstock. Luckily, the debossed rectangle areas aren't too obvious, so the background is still usable. I'll adhere it to a top-folding A2 size card base using a double-sided adhesive runner, and I'll finish the card by adhering a rainbow that was cut with my die-cutting machine from glitter cardstock. Like the lemon embellishment from the first card, this rainbow piece was left over from another project, and I thought it would be perfect with the cloud background. I popped it up with double-sided adhesive foam and adhesive squares, and finished the card with another print and cut foiled sentiment. I've got to say that I was a little bit unsure going into this how the flocked results would be with the flock transfer sheets, but now they're actually one of my favorite new craft supplies. I love how solidly the flocking transfers with both the Deco Foil Transfer Gel and the double-sided adhesive sheets. And between these two transfer adhesives and all of the other adhesives that you can use to transfer the flocking from the sheets to your project, you've got so many design options. I really hope that the flock transfer sheets are a hit because I'd love to see them in more colors, like bright red and green for Christmas, some pastel colors like light pink, aqua, mint green, and I think it would also be really great to have some browns, tans, maybe a reddish orange, and some grays that can be used for adding flock to animal die cuts. I mean, if I got a card with a little flock bear on it, I think I'd just want to pet it all day long. You can find a full list of supplies used in this video in the description area below or in the area below the video if you're watching on k.becca.com. I hope that this video was helpful for you, and if you'd like to see more projects that use the Deco Foil Flock Transfer Sheets, please let me know by giving the video a thumbs up or by leaving a comment below. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll tune in again soon.